how or what are those early signs what a parent or a teacher can point out that yes, this child is having a delayed response? What should we do at that time?
So everything begins from home. See, no child comes to school at 6 months or 1 year or 1.5 year. So it is about the parent's interaction with the child. I think the earliest sign is the parent who pick it up.
It is not the child who needs to adjust uh, as to how he is, but it's the community who needs to accept the child, and it's the community who needs to evolve.
Including or integrating these children is not only the society's responsibility, it's a shared responsibility. It's the family who needs to create that environment, acceptance first, create the environment, support the kid, and see through the journey.
Namaste, everyone. We know that inclusive education is not a strategy, it is a big responsibility. Today's podcast is a movement. It is not just a podcast, it is a movement for every learner and every educator, as we have Miss Masarat Tawawala herself, who is going to talk about inclusive education.
So before, Seema, thank you for having me here. But before we speak about neurodiversity, the schools and the systems, policy and the infrastructure, I want to give a very powerful message to everybody out here that every child who comes into this world has a unique set of things, has a unique wiring, has a unique rhythm, and has a unique way of seeing the world. So when we talk about neurodiversity, these children also come with a unique pathway. They do not follow the usual pathway, and most of us say it's deviation. But for me, neurodiversity is not a deviation from humanity, it's a variation of humanity. And from this, I would like to take your first question about neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is what is it? It's all about information processing, the way the brain processes information. So you and I process it differently, and we are so called normal, but in neurodiversity, it's just the wiring of the brain is different. The development pathways are different. They look at the world differently. The way they take in information, they process it, and the way they give to that response is a deviated part. But it's a different part. It's not a deviated part, it's a different part. And that's what makes neurodiversity so very different. And if you look at it, if we know the way they think, the way they process, and the way they develop, and we understand those systems, we definitely are in a better place to understand neurodiversity. So it is all about understanding the pathways of the child. Once you understand these unique pathways of the child, then you do not want to try and fit the child into that system. So he's neuro, he's different, he's diverse. I can say that. And I think the best part about it is once you understand these unique pathways, you want to support that child. You don't want to label, but you want to support his development. And neurodiversity is all about that different pathways in a child.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I truly agree that every parent, every teacher, every school should support and offer such a system where we can support. But often, what happens is they are not capable enough, or they don't have the complete knowledge about how to recognize a child who's neurodiverse. So, ma'am, as per you, and you come with great knowledge in this area, how or what are those early signs what a parent or a teacher can point out that yes, this child is having a delayed response? What should we do at that time?
So everything begins from home. See, no child comes to school at 6 months or 1 year or 1.5 year. So it is about the parent's interaction with the child. I think the earliest sign is the parent who pick it up. It's a very little things. A child not giving you an eye contact, not responding at 9 months to a cooing, babbling sound, or not looking his head towards a doorbell when it rings. These are the signs that the parents need to pick up for their children. They also naturally, a parent is a natural teacher, a natural guide for the child. So the parent definitely knows what is he deviating from. So when the parents find these kind of child, I think the first thing that they need is to seek support, need to go and assess the child. Now, assessing or screening is not a label for us. It is just that you have diabetes, you find those signs and symptoms of fatigue and all, and you quickly do your blood test. Why don't we do the same thing for our children? Why do we wait for 3 years and 4 years to assess them? So once they are assessed, you get a kind of a report, maybe informal, formal, to understand whether the child is delayed, not delayed. And assessing or screening is not a label. It is just the beginning of an early support for the child. It's a beginning when you can be a better parent, an informed parent, you get better support, and it's better, you get a head start for the child at a very young age. So that's when I feel that the parents need to look out for early signs. And I'm sure the parents, when they visit development pediatricians and pediatricians, they're asking those questions. Why is my child not doing this? Why is my child not looking at me? Why is my child not pointing out? Why is my child not making cooing sounds? I think that's the place where the early signs are detected.
So true, ma'am. And I think one aspect is awareness of the parents, but the second aspect is the fear. Because once the parent is aware, then there is a fear whether my child will be accepted by the community or not. So, what are your thoughts about it? And how do we integrate neurodiverse children into the community settings from day one?
I think the most important is the visibility, Seema. I know your child may be just 1 year old. You already have assessed him. You have the fear. Will my child be accepted? What is going to be it? Can I take him to a birthday party? Can I take him for a social function? In the wedding, is he going to overreact, underreact? Is he going to do a meltdown or something like that? But I think for all of us, we have to understand a visibility is the most important. You can't isolate the child for life, right? You need to be for him or her to be seen in the parks, in the your social gathering, in the community places, in a theater. I understand it's very difficult. He may throw a temper tantrum, whatever it is. But if the society starts seeing him at a young age, what is the society going to do? Accept the child, right? You automatically he becomes a part of your community circle. Of he becomes a part of your society. You have no other way but to see the child whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you accept it little or more, whether you see whether it's normal or not normal. I think the visibility is most important. Like I would just compare it, I would want to give you an analogy to us at a later stage. Many of us have cancer, we lose our hair. Do we stop moving around in the society? Do we stop if we have got a fracture or we've got a physical deformity? Do we stop moving around? So why is there that we stop taking our children who are neurodiverse, who cannot be seen, who look very perfect, who may have pranks, an ADHD kid may be running around, an autism kid may not shake hands and may not make eye contact. Why is it that we do not want them to be seen in the right places? I think that would be the key to it. And the more the society sees them, I think the more the society will learn to accept them. And it would be a society where people grow together, different abilities grow together.
So, I guess the whole idea, ma'am, what you're trying to say is that the child grows up. So, of course, there is acceptance, and then the child grows up.
Confident.
It's okay to be different, but
Yes.
not diminished.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
a very, very,
Very
important,
important.
factor. So now comes the question that what are the real possibilities that exist within a community for neurodiverse children? Because I know that it is not just schooling that you're doing, you've grown beyond and you have many pathways in your academia as well. So beyond therapy and schooling also, you've done much more. So ma'am, please guide us on this.
So let's take. I want to take you to a journey of a kid, if you allow me to. He's diagnosed, say at the age of 2, 2.5. Then you start looking for preschools. We understand that the children have to be in mainstream schools, preschools till a certain age, because their neural pathway will become stronger, and the connections they form will be much better. You've done that, and then you come to a crucial point in a child's life where either he goes to a mainstream school. If he's mild, he'll go to a mainstream school. Moderate, severe, profound will need special schools. From there, you put them into whichever streams you want, mainstream or into special schools. The start is right from there. The child goes to a special school, mainstream school. You have to start planning for them at the age of 8 and 9, because in neurodiversity, everything takes longer. If a child is 8 years old, you start planning for puberty. If a child is in puberty, start planning for adolescence. From adolescence, you start planning into adulthood. So, coming to the crux of your question, is that there are a lot of avenues. But these avenues have to be supported right from the child from 2 years till say XYZ years. You have to keep on building on that avenues. From a very young age, 9 years, 10 years, you recognize his strengths. What are his strengths? You can't follow this mainstream path where neurotypical children follow it. His strength may be just in using musical instrument at that time, but you know that he has got the affinity to that musical instrument. It could be that he's robust and he loves outdoor and he keeps on cycling, he keeps on playing games, whichever come his way. So we know that it could be a sports assistant tomorrow to a sports instructor. I'm not saying he would be a sports instructor, but he could be an assistant. He would have so many roles. The best profession for neurodiverse kids are some in gardening, in housekeeping, in digital literacy. I want to give you an example. Like autistic kids are structured and detailed. They love that structure and detail all throughout their life. They can spot even a slightest misinterpretation in your logo,
Oh,
or they
really?
can pick
Wow.
up from a passage. They can pick up the mistakes like this. So those are like lawyers employ them because lawyers hate to read the briefs and all. They could be, assistant to the chefs. They love cutting. They'll cut you the same vegetable, the same onions, the same way for the next 20 years, which you and I cannot do. So because of their perfectionist, because of their structure, they have a lot of professions open to them. Peace, calm, loving children will love gardening and those kind of things. Many of the children are employed by Lemon Tree in hospitality industries. So there are a lot of avenues open to them now with the technology and all. And with proper structure, job coaching from school, from grade 10, going into a vocational center, spending 3 years at the vocational center, having the support of a job coach, then seeking cooperates for them. And of course, the environments have to be modified, but you will find of them umpteen number of possibilities, especially with ADHD. Today, they are the most creative people. They are spontaneous, they are impulsive, they are the creative people. You will find those solutions not coming from a neurotypical. So, you have a lot of avenues. You want somebody on the move for your PR, for your event management. I think ADHD are the best because they love to be on the move. They love to meet people. So, there are a lot of things open to them. The only thing is that are you willing to sustain yourself? Are you willing to support them? Is the parent going to be there for this kind of a journey which takes nearly 20 years?
Ma'am, I
Yes.
think this kind of awareness is so valuable because you've actually mapped the skill sets of all of these children to the kind of work that they can do
Yes.
ahead, which is amazing work. I think somebody who's so consistent, there are some specific job opportunities which are available for them in the market. So, thank you so much for guiding us on that, ma'am. My next question to you would be when we say building sustainable special schools, um, is sustainability really about only the infrastructure, or is it also about preparing the children to live within communities confidently?
It's never about the infrastructure. It's never about the school buildings. I think sustainability, if you ask me truly, will not be sustaining a child from K1 to grade 12. It will never be. It is sustaining him after school. Can he live in meaningfully into the society, into the community? So your job and my job as sustainable, if you want to put it, is very different from what sustainability is all about. So can you give him those skills when he was 6 years old, 7 years old, 12 years, 15 years old to make a life independent of himself? So at a very ground level, can he do his ADL skills independently, eating, taking care of his washing needs as he goes into puberty, adolescence? As an adolescence, the changes that he develops, can he take care of themselves? So his life skills, can he be independent in his life skills? Sustainability is, can he go outside and talk with his peers, not a group of them, but three, four of his peers, have a simple conversation about the climate, how is it, what is it? That is sustainability. Can he go to a coffee shop and sit there and order a coffee and a sandwich for himself and be happy till the next person comes and sits on his table? Can he go to a wedding and make that simple little conversation without feeling left out? Can he dress up nicely, look at himself at the mirror and say, today I'm looking good and stepping out? That is sustainability. So everything sustainability is very different here. It's beyond the classroom, it is beyond the therapy room. Sustainability is right in our society, it's in our community places, in our gardens, in our theaters, it's everywhere. When the child lives independently, not the way you and I may live, independently doing his own way, going to the bank, giving his passbook, maybe he may and just write his check or sign his check, that's sustainability. Maybe he'll not be able to read the statement. Maybe he cannot read his financial statement. But doing his own jobs and later on when he's an adult, can he sustain himself by independent living solutions with three, four other kids who are of the same kind? You have like paying as our girls go out in the hostel and live together. Can this child sustain himself living together? One do the grocery, the other does the housekeeping, cleaning. Somebody just with the cook helps the cook. That is sustainability. Can we sustain his journey through the adulthood life? And can society help us for that?
So that brings me to the next question, and of course, it's a very, very valid point, ma'am. And I think it is not the child who needs to adjust as to how he is, but is the community who needs to accept the child, and it's the community who needs to evolve. So I think that's exactly, ma'am, what you're talking about. But any more thoughts about this whole thing?
So, including or integrating these children is not only society's responsibility, it's a shared responsibility. It's a family who needs to create that environment, acceptance first, create the environment, support the kid, and see through the journey. It could be the sibling, it could be the grandparents, it's a whole family affair. And then comes the community and society at large. I think what we need to understand is we cannot build systems to fit that child. Our systems have to be around the child. The child is not something that he has to fit into that system. Can you evolve your society? Can you evolve your systems? Can a community be more inclusive? Can we have an like we have in school an interact club for special children? A Rotaract club for special children. A Rotary has got this. So they're so happy in that space. They're doing their small projects like river cleaning and all. And they feel so good that they are part of a larger Rotary club. So can we do all that? Can our society, it's all about empathy. Sympathy is like, let's go and give him the money. Let's do one meal for these children. Oh, we need to give a wheelchair. When people come to my school and ask me that, I really feel so dejected.
We certainly don't need that.
Yeah, we don't need that. I mean, if this kind of help has to come in, there are more institutions needing those kind of help. But can a school come and spend a week with our kids and understand them and evolve with them, take them out for a coffee? That is what
Give
the
them a
society-
purpose, include them in their activities.
Include them.
Yes.
That
Give
is
them-
what inclusion
yes,
is all
yes,
about.
yes, yes.
And can in a gathering, in a normal gathering, our kids be included? In a retro party? No, they're not included. They have challenges. I know they need sound cancellations, but nobody takes them to a pub. But they are dying to go to a pub. They keep on telling us we want to go to a dance floor. They want to dance their way, which may be a little odd, but yes, they want to dance, right? So can a friend give that opportunity? Okay, I'll get 3, 4 more friends without bullying them, without making them fun of them, without sexually abusing them. That is what the society needs to understand, and that would be very important. We need them to evolve,
Ma'am, beautifully put together. I think
and I'm sure these children will just flourish.
I'm sure.
Confidence will grow, independence will come in, then the whole lot of things just follows.
Yes, so I think that inclusion and the community needs to evolve to include them into everything that we are doing, and not to seclude them, empathize with them, understand them, and take them along together.
I think you put it beautifully.
Yeah. So parents often also wonder about adulthood. That's, I think, a worry for everybody, but especially for these parents as well. What will happen to their child when they are not around?
$1 million question. And even for a neurotypical, we are worried. You can imagine for neurodiverse, how is it going to be? I think the way we have that our children are in neurodiversity without labeling them, without give them the unconditional support, we have to to unconditionally start planning for their future. It is not when they come in adolescence suddenly think, oh, we need the financial planning. They will make these finances of yours from day one. So let's look at the financial sector first because that's where it is. Can you join an NGO or a trust who can give you finances if you
You're
do
not
not
around.
have around? Also, can you plan a will for yourself? Can you keep a part of your saving, like you keep for the other children, a little more for these kids? Can you do a monthly income for them? You know, by adolescence, if you have a house, you please see that you name this house on the child. See that all your legal formalities are done. Can you have a trustee who's the most trusted person around? It could be a sibling, it could be whoever, who has this continual flow of money for this child. And can you give him a life skill that sustains himself? See, the moment you're not there, this structure is going to go haywire because you were always around for him. You sent him 9 o'clock for a job, this, that. Making him independent in his life skill, taking a metro, going to a place, coming back with a rickshaw or driving a two-wheeler or whatever it is most important. Can you see to it that you've put him into such a structure that without you, 9 to 5 to 9 to 6, he's somewhere occupied. He's done his bit. So later on, if the vacuum is not there. Another thing which I have noticed in my lifetime, and I want to send a very strong message is wean your child away from you. Can you park him somewhere for weekends? 7 days you are getting exhausted, the child is only seeing you. Can he go 2 days to a home where he's, people like children like him, students like him, adults like him is spending time. Like how we have a senior citizen home, right? Why don't we have an assisted solution for our kids? There are far and few in metropolitan city where kids, students or adults come together over the weekend and 5 days they are with the children, with the parents or the other way around. We need to do this from a young age. You have an adolescent kid, send him 2 days to your grandparents, send him to your native village, send him to a trusted friend's house where he's not abused or thing. That the first process is weaning the children up to independently live. Financial things. Also plan for his sheltered employment. Can he go and make paper bags somewhere? Can you have in your, if you have a medical shop, if you have an entrepreneurship, can he be there usefully doing something? Just don't call him and make him pick up coffee mugs. That's not going to be the case out. So many things. Can he have a social network where he goes every Sunday to a center where he does art, craft, a social network? There are so many avenues like that. Can he go and work at a cafe that he likes without payment, but he's occupied? There he can pick up plates and whatever it is, but he's networking it. These are very important. Structured transition planning from to see that when you are not around, that entire structured transition planning takes minimum 5 years for a child.
So, ma'am, are there any government organizations or NGOs who are working towards supporting, these kind of children? If you could sensitize our audience.
Government has certain schemes, where they get a certain stipend when you're in neurodiversity. But again, it's a very funny situation. They take the degree of neurodiversity. If in your test, degree of neurodiversity is 80%, you will not get anything. But actually, the child is having a lot of challenges with besides your paper pencil test that you have taken. He's got behavioral issues, he's got hormonal issues, he's got mental illness associated with it, which is not diagnosed at certain point of time. Then that's the close. So we need to evolve in our policies and regulations. There are a lot of NGOs working, but actually, what we need is a directory of people who are working into it. And like this year I opened the vocational center. Within 2 years, I want to open community spaces in townships. Like we have big townships with 1,500 flats. I'm sure out of that, 100 children are neurodiverse, more than that. Can they come to these centers, maybe over a weekend, and be constructively occupied, like our senior citizens go for a weekend, to a place at a very nominal cost. So at least parents know that 2 days of the week, they are into something engaged there. So if the community, the NGOs, the government, the schools, even the mainstream schools, can they let us out their spaces? See, today renting out a space and building an infrastructure is not a joke. We are hands down when it comes to money. So can mainstream schools give us their spaces which are left, for these kind of community centers? And I think that would work beautifully. I've seen all this abroad, but then a lot of support is by the government or by the community. But if we can do that, I think that would be very nice.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I truly feel that this was one of the most engaging and enlightening conversations that I've had till now. And I do believe that there is a lot for all of us to do, whether it is the government, whether it is the community, the society, the teachers, educators, parents, everybody. We have a lot of things to do, and which is why in the beginning itself I had said that this podcast is not going to be just a podcast interview, it's going to be a whole movement. Signing off, I'm Seema Tanwar. Thank you so much.
I would want to give a very last message, which I feel, Seema, we need to send out to the parents. Our children are not asked to be changed, believe me. They are asked to be understood. Sustainable special school are not places of separation. They are places of preparation. And I truly believe in that. Preparation for dignity, preparation for independence, preparation for belonging. And perhaps the real question is not, can neurodiverse individuals fit into the society? The real question is the society ready to grow?
Absolutely. Yes.
Because the moment we build systems that include everybody, we just don't transform lives, we transform humanity. Thank you so much,
Thank
Seema.
you. Thank you so much, Masraf ma'am. It's been really a pleasure to host you here. Thank you.
Thank you.